Hello and welcome to the Treasury Talent Podcast. I'm your host, Simon Lynch. Today I'm really excited. I'll be joined by Rakesh Kochhar, who is the Treasurer of Nissan, based out of Tokyo in Japan. So really excited to get his career journey and insight into to Nissan and his role and his career development through that business. So I hope today our international guest out of Tokyo is one that you'll really enjoy. I hope you enjoy chatting to Rakesh. Welcome to the program, Rakesh. It's great to have you. I'm really looking forward to chatting today. And you're the first international guest I've had from Tokyo and Japan.
Thank you, Simon, for having me. Look forward to chatting with you.
I always ask the first question, which is, how did you come to Treasury and why did you choose Treasury as your career?
Yeah, I think it happened by default. I'm originally from India. Of course, I've lived in many countries now, and I am a chartered accountant, and later on I became an MBA. So I started my life, working life, as in accounting department. But after 3 years, I was given an opportunity to move to Treasury as at a lower level, and I really enjoyed from that time. And ever since that time, I've been in Treasury. And I really enjoy even today, even though I've done it for many years now.
Just for the listeners, I'll give them a quick summary. You started your career with GE back in India and spent 9 years with them. Moved to Delphi in the automotive sector for 9 years, initially in an Asia Pacific role, but then transferred with them to Michigan in the US. You then moved to Nissan Motor Company, originally as the US Treasurer in Nashville, but then transferred with that business to Yokohama in Japan as the global treasurer. You've subsequently added a number of roles there, one of them the $70 billion auto finance business, but you've also spent a stint as the CFO for their Africa, Middle East and India segment, and you now also have an in-house bank and a reinsurance company. So maybe we can start with your time at Nissan. Your global treasury team there is 110. We've got $100 billion worth of debt funding and an $11 billion pension asset book. Maybe tell the listeners a little bit about the challenges of running a global treasury of that size.
Yeah, global treasury is always challenging and interesting. Nissan is a massive organization. We have revenue in excess of $100 billion. Then we have a large auto finance business like many other big automakers. More than $90 billion in assets, so you need to fund it. So there are many areas in Treasury that one has to pay attention. So of course, the basic one is how to fund your company. So I have to fund my company in the automotive segment, but more importantly, I have to fund my company in sales finance segment, $90 billion of assets, about 10 billion of equity. The remaining 80 billion is funded from bank loans, capital markets, commercial paper, securitization. So funding becomes very important. Then you have cash management in a global company. When you are operating in various countries all over the world, and Nissan sells cars in more than 100 countries, cash management is important because there are certain countries which will be generating cash. There will be certain countries which need cash. There are certain countries in which you're spending money. So you have to manage cash because you are operating in many countries. Not only cash management is a challenge, foreign exchange becomes a big hassle, big challenge, because your currency of purchase and sale is not the same. So that's another area. Risk management becomes very important because you don't want to do business with counterparties where there is a risk that they cannot honor their terms, whether it is a supplier risk, whether it is a banking risk, whether it's a risk where you're investing your cash. So that's very important. And finally, pension assets management. Many large companies have defined benefit obligations, and we have one. And we have about $11 billion in pension assets in Japan, US, UK, and many other countries. So the management of those assets is also with Treasury. So it's very diversified, and it's because there are so many areas, and the scale is so big. It's very interesting. And I have a big team in Japan. I have a big regional team in United States that take care of North America. And then I have a team in Europe as well that takes care of all of Europe. Plus having individual, treasury people in various other locations which are not covered by these regions. So very interesting.
Rakesh, I just wanted to quickly touch on the time you spent as CFO, because a lot of treasurers out there aspire to be a CFO. You did that for 3 years, but then decided to stick with the treasury side. Maybe just talk us through, your time there and making that transition to treasurer, just giving the listeners a little bit of an idea as to how you found that and any advice on that.
Yeah, the treasurers are one of the logical, the logical move for a treasurer is to move into a CFO role. So I got an opportunity to become as a CFO for a region called Africa, Middle East, India. It was interesting. You get to, decide a lot of operational matters when you are in the CFO. So that transition was easy for me. It was not difficult. The only thing is that when I was in that role, I still continued to have the global treasury responsibility for Nissan. I continued to be responsible as a CEO of Nissan sales finance business. It was just very difficult to do 3 different jobs at the same time. I did it for 2.5, 3 years because it was fun. It was a lot of work for me, but I added value for myself. And then eventually, because I still had a global responsibility for treasury and as a CEO of sales finance business, I preferred to come back because running a business as a sales finance, which generates more than 250 billion yen of profit for Nissan, was more interesting, and I wanted to keep that. If that option was not available to me, maybe I would have continued on the CFO track.
So it was more that the job that you're doing now was more fun rather than the CFO wasn't the career path you wanted.
Yes. I mean, at that time, things can always change.
Absolutely. Now, you grew up in your early part of your career with GE in Treasury. Now, I really hold GE out there as one of the global yardsticks. Talk us through the things you enjoyed and maybe the Treasury environment and growing up in that to give the listeners a bit of an idea.
Yeah, GE is a very professional company, and it was a massive company at the time. I was fortunate to be part of the company and grew in the Treasury organization because very early on, I became very professional. I was exposed to international best practices. And then from there, when I transitioned to Delphi, which at the time was owned by General Motors, GM is also used to be called at the time a treasury factory of the world. So I had the good fortune of working in my early life between GE and then move on to Delphi or GM. So I really could understand a lot of best practices, and that really has helped me until today to be able to do well in my job on an ongoing basis.
It's interesting you say that because GM is another that I would hold out as like the gold standard from a treasury perspective. So you've really had your formative years with 2 of the best in the business.
Yeah, I think, as I said, I was fortunate to work to have an opportunity to work very early on as my first job, and then when I moved international from India to Singapore, that's where I worked for Delphi, which at that time was owned by GM. So all treasury was coming out of GM, and it was very, very interesting for me to be exposed to the 2 of the companies which were best in class in treasury all over the world. And, I really learned a lot in those early parts of my life.
I wanted to ask you about being a global citizen because growing up in India, then working in the US and now working in Japan, 3 very, very different cultures. What's your advice to others wanting to be global citizens and working in very different cultural environments like that?
Yeah, I say that I've worked in 5 places. So India, then about 4 years in Singapore, then about 9 years in US, but 9 years in the US was 2 different states, which are like 2 countries. Michigan, about 4.5, 5 years, and then about 3 years in Tennessee. Very, very different. And then now 11 years in Japan. I mean, I have personally enjoyed living in different places. I've been fortunate to have a family that really enjoys exploring different cultures, different countries. So it's been fun on a personal level because, I believe that we all live once, so why not enjoy different cultures? I think what is very important is if you really want to grow in your career, you have to be international citizen because companies are becoming global. The businesses are not local. The businesses are regional. They are global. And for you to succeed, you should be ready to work, but then you should also ready to adapt to the different environment. It was easy for me to adapt from India to Singapore, but adapting from Singapore to US, it came easy to me, but I've also seen people who have struggled. And then I can tell you, coming from US to Japan, I have seen a lot of people who really struggle and basically went back to US. And for me, maybe because my original, heritage is Asian, I really enjoyed Japan. It was not difficult for me. I don't speak the language even today, but my team is very, they speak different languages. So communicating in English is not an issue. It's all about what do you want to do. If you really want to grow in your career, you should be ready to take international opportunities, and then you should be ready to adapt. You cannot say that I go to a different country and I will not respect their culture, or I will not adapt to the local practice. You have to adapt. And if you like adapting, then I think it's a great international career is great for you.
Rakesh, in terms of your career so far, what would be the highlights in your mind? Having worked across all those countries in some very amazing companies, what things stand out for you as your highlights?
I think one of the highlights I would say, number one, working in different places itself is a highlight. But another highlight I would say, which I'm happy, I'm proud of, is I've only worked in 3 companies. And in all 3 companies, I pretty much started at a lower level. Of course, when I moved to Nissan, I started as a director of Treasury in US because I was already doing a certain level of work back in GM and Delphi. But when I started working for GE back in India, it was the lowest level, first job. But eventually, by the time I left GE, I was the treasurer of the Indian company, of course, small company. Then when I moved to Delphi in Singapore, because I was moving my country and it's the first time I have to prove myself in international environment, the level was very low. From that low level to become a number 2 guy in the Delphi Global Treasury was good. And then eventually when I came to Nissan, I started as a director of treasury in the US. Then I became a global treasurer in Japan. And then I added a massive sales finance business. So starting at very low level and going to the top of the company in your profession has been my highlight. And that comes with your knowledge, your experience, your hard work, and your ability to be able to adapt to the environment.
In terms of making those moves, and growing your career, what's been your approach to networking across the journey?
Well, I think networking is important. It helps you because networking is good for you personally. Number one, you learn when you network because you're trying to network with like-minded people who may be treasurers, CFOs, or maybe in different areas in different companies. So you learn about various practices, and also you network for your own career. So I think networking is very, very important. But again, in addition to networking, it's always going to be your hard work, your capability, your dedication to what you do. And also one more thing that I don't know whether I'll say I should help me, is, when I was the treasurer of North America, the global financial crisis hit us in 2008, 2009. And my ability was tested because I could deliver. Company brought me to Japan as a global head of treasury because they saw this guy is able to deliver in North America in a very tough environment. Now we saw coronavirus a few months ago, and have been able to manage the liquidity position very well. We came out with a massive bond issue just in September, and we raised the money at a very right time at the right cost. So that also helps you because people are able to look at you and say that you are able to seize those moments and you're able to do well for the company, and then eventually you do well for yourself.
It's interesting you say that, Rakesh, because a number of people have said to me on the podcast that some of their best experiences have come out of adversity. And it sounds like, your ability to do a really good job under adversity was another highlight for you.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you a lot of satisfaction personally. When you are tested in the environment, are you able to withstand the pressure? Are you able to see, what is the best thing to do for the company? Are you able to execute, or you just give up? So, I had a big challenge back in North America because US was in the middle of the crisis in 2008, 2009, and I was able to deliver. Then coronavirus everybody was hit. I was able to deliver. So really, you enjoy those moments, even though those are not good for the company. But if there is a challenge, if you're able to deliver in that challenge, that's always very, very helpful.
What about mentors, Rakesh? Have they been a big part of your career or helped you along your journey?
I have had some. I haven't had many, but I think when you do well and you really work very hard for the company and you deliver consistently, your boss becomes your best mentor. because he really likes to have you as part of the team, because you're able to deliver in a consistent manner. So that's, I think I've had, people, bosses who have really guided me in the past, and that was also very helpful.
If you were to go back and chat to yourself at 25 when you were starting your career, what's the one thing that you know now that you wish you'd been told back then, and the piece of advice you give to listeners on the back of that?
I would say we all learn from experience. And, when you're young, if it's a small problem, it sounds like a big problem. So as you gain that experience, you realize, oh, that was such a small thing. Why I used to worry too much about that. Two, life is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Many people want to succeed very quickly. Success comes with knowledge. Knowledge comes with hard work. So I would say that be patient. Opportunities will come if you work hard, if you deliver in your job. Opportunities will come your way. I would say I was a little impatient when I was starting, and I used to think a small problem at that time is a very big problem. So you learn with experience. So just be patient and do your job. And I think paths will come your way, which you have not chosen for you, but those are pretty good paths.
And Rakesh, when you're looking to hire your direct reports, what are the main things that you're looking for when you hire?
I could not have imagined back in 25 years that I would be sitting in Japan. I cannot. Can you hear me?
I think we just had a technical issue there, Rakesh. Sorry.
Okay.
Maybe I'll continue on with, when you're hiring into your team, Rakesh, what are the main things you're looking for in your direct reports?
Well, of course, they need to have, if I'm hiring at a direct report level, which is going to be a pretty senior guy, they should have the kind of experience, not necessarily if I'm hiring for cash management to cash management, but a good treasury experience. So they should have the right treasury experience if they're coming at a senior level. But more importantly, their attitude is very, very important. If I have to choose between attitude and knowledge, I will go for the attitude, because I think knowledge will come in due course. But if you have all the knowledge, but if you do not have the right attitude, that you complain at the slightest possible opportunity, or if 2 assignments are given to you, you say, well, I don't want to work till 8 p.m., then it would be a problem. So attitude is very, very important when you try to look for people. And also you look for people who are going to be more team players, because you do not want to cause friction. So I think those are the things we look for in the people when we try to hire.
What would you say makes a successful treasurer in the eyes of the CFO, the CEO, and the board?
Well, number one, you need to understand the financial needs of the company, and you need to be able to provide for those needs. If you need X amount of liquidity, you should be able to have it, because that's the basis for the company to function on a daily basis. So you need to keep your CFO, your board, your CEO apprised of the situation, cash flow in the company, and what you're doing to arrange the liquidity that's needed. And then you need to manage your risk very, very well, because in a big company, when you're a treasurer, you will be exposed to risk management. And as I said, there is a counterparty risk, there is a foreign exchange risk, there is a commodities risk, there is a supplier risk that they may not be able to deliver parts to you, and you cannot manufacture cars. So basically, you have to keep, the management would be very interested in liquidity risk, in the other risk management that the company is exposed. And then, if you can handle those well and stay ahead, and always remember, never go and tell your CEO that you will run out of cash in 2 months from now. That's a career limiting move.
Absolutely. So a no surprises attitude.
Yes, absolutely. You need to, because you're in a senior role, you need to be able to understand what's going on in the company, and how do you make sure that things continue to be smooth and you are able to fund the company in a very efficient manner.
I mean, just on that, has there been one particular thing during the COVID corona that we've just had that springs to mind as being like something that you're really proud of?
Well, our ability to adapt to the situation very quickly, when the COVID hit, it hit us instantly, because initial impact was in China. Everybody thought, okay, it'll be okay. And China, we operate through a joint venture. We have lots of cash in China, so we were not worried. But all of a sudden, it hit us in the US and Europe. They went down like within a matter of 5 days. They went down to complete shutdown. So you can imagine, when you sell about $100 billion a year, it's $8 billion a month. If you lose out of that $8 billion, if you lose $5 billion of cash flow, you need to produce that $5 billion quickly. So we had to raise money very, very quickly. And when you have to raise money very quickly, because the environment is bad, capital market is never going to be good. Because when the environment is so bad, capital market would also not be good. Rates will be very high. And we saw some of our competitors raising money at 6, 7, 8, 9%. So at that time, you need to rely on the banking relationships. You go to the banks and you say it's a temporary situation. We need funding. It's a working capital play. And when the market is good, you go to the capital market, raise the money, and repay the banks. And that's what we do exactly. I think ability to adapt and provide for the liquidity at a short notice was something I'm really proud of.
One last question for you, Rakesh. Technology is moving very quickly, and even more so as we're going through this COVID situation. How do you see the role of the treasurer changing with this technology advancements?
I think we have to keep pace with the technology. So there are a lot of things in Treasury as well we can use our technology. One is that when you look at a cash management, you can have virtual pooling systems working with banks where on a daily basis how much cash you have all over the world. So that's one. You can facilitate your payments, your money transfers using technology. So you reduce the paperwork and you use more, internet banking, working with the banks, which is also secured. So I think we have a role to play, because using the technology, not only we can speed up our work, we can optimize our workforce, but also we can make it more secure, working with the technology. So I think we have to keep pace with it.
Absolutely. Well, Rakesh, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure chatting to you, and I look forward to chatting again in the future.
Thank you, Simon. Really my pleasure to talk to you. I really enjoyed this conversation.